This is a peace lily. It's a really popular plant. It's incredibly low maintenance. It doesn't really require much care beyond correct watering. So as long as you get the placement right and you're watering it correctly, which we'll teach you how to do in this video, then this is a great plant for you if you like the way it looks. So before we talk about the placement, let's actually talk about what do you look out for when you buy this plant, making sure that it looks healthy and you're getting a good plant. The big warning signs to look out for when you're getting this plant initially is looking at the tips of the leaves. Effectively, if you look closely at these leaves, you'll notice that the tips are green all the way till the end. If you go to a store or you get a plant and you start seeing black at the end of the tips, you start seeing brown at the end of the tips, then it could have had a watering issue throughout its life and care. If that's the case, look for a different plant. And as long as the leaves look fully green like this, you know you have a great plant and you can start off with it right away. So you get home, you got your plant, you're pretty confident with it. Where do you place it? This plant can tolerate different levels of light to keep it as happy as possible, which basically means retaining blooms as long as possible and getting new blooms very often. You want to place it as close to the window as you can. If this was your window, come home and place it right next to your window. You don't really have to worry about it getting too much direct sunlight if you live in the UAE. If you just start Googling peace lilies, where do I place it? A lot of websites will tell you, don't give it direct sunlight, it can burn the foliage. And whilst that is absolutely true, most houses, most apartments in the UAE are heavily tinted. It is highly, highly unlikely that your foliage is going to get burnt by the sun straight away. If that were to be the case, you would put it in front of your window and you would notice scorch marks within 30 minutes, 1 hour. So as long as you don't notice scorch marks, then you're not going to burn your plant. It could be too much sunlight for the current watering system. We'll get into that in a second. But what you want to do is you come home, place it in front of the window and look at it. Leave it there for a few days and assess what the plant is looking like. If the leaves start drooping very quickly, if they start they will look like they're dried out. If the flowers start falling over, then it might be getting too much light. When we talk about the care situation, we'll get into how do you then manage that. How do you water this plant? It's a little tricky. The reason it's tricky is because the peace lilies fall under a category of plants that like their soil to remain moist. Now, we've spoken about this in our plant watering video. If you want to learn more, you can watch that video. But effectively, what you want to do when you're watering your peace lily is you want to take it out and you want to test the soil. So the way you test the soil is by literally touching the top layer of the soil. If that top layer feels dry and not wet or cold in any way, it means it's ready to be rewatered. You then have to take it to a sink, water the entire soil, make sure that lots of water is coming out the bottom, let all that excess water come away, and then return your plant to its planter or wherever it was before. Now, wherever it was before, what else do I want to talk about? So we've talked about the placement of the plant. You know exactly where to put it when you come home. You know how to water your plant. What are some things to look out for in the future? There are basically two big categories of things that can go wrong with this plant. The first thing that you might notice over time is your peace lily will start to droop. It'll start looking really sad and it'll start to sag. If that happens, it's 100% a watering related issue. You need to understand how does water cycle throughout the peace lily to identify what that issue is. So this is how it works. There's water in the base of the plant in the soil. That water is then going up the stems towards the ends of the leaves and evaporating out of the stomata of the leaves. That water cycle is creating water pressure, and that water pressure is what's making the leaves stand up. Think of it as like a hose that doesn't have water running through it. You then put on the water in full blast and that hose starts like to straighten up. That's what's happening to all plants, which is causing the leaves to stand up. So if your peace lily's leaves are drooping, that water pressure is not there. Most commonly, it is because there's no water in the soil of your peace lily. It's just not getting enough, it just doesn't have water to push up to the leaves, and therefore there's no pressure that's causing your leaves to droop. So what you do, check the soil. If it's dry, re-water it, give it a day, and it should hopefully stand up. Now, in some rare cases, what might happen is you might come and tell me, no, there is water in the soil. I'm very confident, it's been moist for days, but it is still drooping. It's still falling down. quite drastically. If that's the case, then it's probably too hot or getting too much light. What's happening in that situation is water is evaporating out of the leaves faster than it can get up from the base of the soil. And again, there's therefore no water pressure in that system, causing the leaves to droop. If that's the situation, you need to assess what's going on with your plant. If it's really close to a window and you have a really bright window, then you can move it away from the window. And hopefully once you move it away, in about a day, it'll stand up again, because you're not giving the water a chance to go up the system of the plant and retain itself in the leaves, therefore retaining that pressure. If you've moved it away and it's still not working, then it's probably too hot in the room. If that's the case, try to move it somewhere cooler, and hopefully that'll solve your issue. If that still doesn't solve your issue, then it might be, and this is the worst case scenario, that your roots are damaged. The roots being damaged, they probably have rotten away and they're therefore unable to absorb water from the soil and pull it up the rest of the plant. If that's the situation, you would need to repot your plant, take away all of the old soil, cut away all of the rotted roots, and replace it with new soil, and your plant should be fine. Now, if your peace lily's roots are rotted and you do need to repot them, don't worry, it might seem a bit scary, but it's totally not. We talk all about it in our repotting video. Go check that out, follow the instructions, and you will be totally fine. The second thing you might notice over time is, we touched on earlier, the tips of the leaves will start to go black. Now, if the tips of the leaves are starting to go black, that means that your peace lily's tips are being burnt. The reason they're being burnt is probably to do with the watering and the source of water you're using. What happens is, if your tap water or whatever water you're using to water your peace lily has too many impurities in it, sometimes you may have used too much fertilizer in the past, that raises the pH levels of the soil. There's basically too many salts in there. Those minerals go up the plant, they get pushed all the way to the ends of the leaves, they stay there, and that's what's causing them to burn. It's very common with peace lilies. You might even see some peace lilies in a shop that have burnt tips. If you see that, just stay away from them. When you do see those burnt tips, it's not the end of the world. They're not gonna recover. Those burnt tips are never gonna go back to green. So all you have to do is snip away the ends of the leaves, and hopefully that'll, from an aesthetic point of view, make it look better. But you still need to go solve that root issue of the soil being too high in pH. If that's the case, what you want to do is make sure you're watering it correctly, so that all of the impurities are being If that's the case, you just want to re-water your plant and make sure you're flushing away all of the impurities. When you see lots of water coming at the bottom of the nursery pot, that's a good sign, because it means that all those impurities are flushing away. If that's still not helping your plant, then there may be too much in there. You'd want to repot your plant, take away all the old soil, throw it away, replace it with some new good ones, and hopefully that'll stop it getting worse. Again, the tips are never going to recover, but you can stop it getting worse. Those are the top two issues you could face with the peace lily. It is highly pest resistant. It doesn't need fertilizing too often. It is very low maintenance. If you just get the watering right, make sure it's placed in a perfectly good spot, and you'll be happy with this plant for years to come. Thank you. Okay, I lied. There's one more thing we get when it comes to peace lilies. Although your peace lilies have flowers, don't expect those flowers to stay there 365 days a year. These flowers will eventually wilt and fall away. They will wilt by either going brown and then wilting away, or they might go green then brown. Either way, if you see it starting to wilt, it's not a sign that your plant is unhappy. It will happen. Once you see it starting to wilt, take a clean pair of scissors. It's really important that they're clean. You don't want to transfer anything onto the plant. You can cut away the stem and throw away the flower. Make sure not to hurt anything else in the plant. Now, the more light your plant gets, the more often you'll be rewarded with fresh new blooms. You might get some new blooms every few months. The darker in the space you put it, the less likely you are to get new blooms, frankly. So if you want new blooms, put it by a window. When your blooms start to fade away, then it's nothing to worry about. Your plant is perfectly healthy. Where you do want to look at, but to figure out if your plant is healthy or not, are the leaves. So as long as your leaves are happy, they look nice and green, they're not drooping, they have their nice waxy kind of finish, your plant is super happy and you're doing a really, really good job. Good for you. Keep it up. And thank you for tuning in.